A single seashell once held more power than a sword. It could buy cattle, wives, even kingdoms. And yet, it could also break between your fingers. It sounds absurd, money made from the sea. But for nearly 1,000 years, this fragile currency ruled trade across oceans and continents. Its story begins with death, beauty, and obsession. Long before gold coins gleamed or paper money rustled, the cowrie shell, smooth, white, curved like a tiny smile, was the most desired object on Earth. Found along the shores of the Indian Ocean and the Maldive Islands, these shells became the backbone of entire economies. They weren't just pretty trinkets, they were status, purity, and divine favor. By 1200 CE, cowries had become the world's first global currency. But with that power came something else: greed. In West Africa, kingdoms rose and fell on the flow of these shells. They bought land, loyalty, and people. European traders soon realized, control the shells, and you control the trade. The back, while these shells came that bound millions. How did something so small and so breakable become the bedrock of vast empires? The answer lies in beauty, scarcity, and belief. Picture this: a line of caravans winding through the Sahara, shimmering under a brutal sun. On their backs, sacks filled not with gold, not with salt, but with seashells. These shells had traveled thousands of miles from the Maldive Islands, carried by traders through deserts, rivers, and kingdoms. By the time they reached Timbuktu, their value had multiplied 100-fold. Small enough to hide, beautiful enough to desire, rare enough to control. In Benin, cowries were used for everything: taxes, trade, tribute. In Ghana, the word for money itself came from cowrie. In Mali, fortunes were counted in baskets of shells. Rulers stored them in palaces. Merchants stacked them in courtyards. But someone always finds a way to rig the game. When European traders arrived, they realized what was treasure here was common back in the Maldives. So they imported them, by the ton. At first, it felt like wealth, but soon prices soared. Inflation spread, the sacred shell lost its shine, and in its collapse came exploitation. Europeans used their new shell fortunes to buy gold, ivory, and people. The symbol that built kingdoms now destroyed them. Control the supply, control the people. But what happens when belief itself begins to crack? By the 18th century, West Africa was drowning in cowries. European ships had brought millions, cheap, endless, unstoppable. What was once treasure was now decoration. Markets collapsed. Prices lost meaning. 1,000 shells could no longer buy what 100 once did. The kings who ruled with shells now counted their losses on foreign ledgers. The cowrie became a victim of its own success. Proof that belief, once broken, can't be mended. Here's the irony: the shell never changed. It was still beautiful, still rare, still perfect. But we stopped believing. The story that gave it meaning had ended. It wasn't the shell that lost power, it was us who moved on. And like gold, paper, and now code, we kept chasing the same fragile faith. Money is just a mirror, reflecting what we want to see. And when the reflection fades, so does the empire. By the early 1900s, the cowrie was outlawed. Belief replaced by bureaucracy. Yet, the shell lived on, in memory, in art, in myth. Because deep down, we still crave a symbol that says, I belong, I have worth. As our new world builds digital currencies of trust and code, how much of what we believe is real? 1,000 years later, the cowrie's ghost still drifts through our systems. Only now, our shells are digital, our oceans, our servers, and our belief is encoded in blockchain. New shells, same faith. We swipe, we trade, we mine, numbers move, screens glow, and once again, we convince ourselves that trust can live inside a symbol. But look closely. Isn't this the same story, told in binary? In 17th century Africa, Belief in a shell made empires. In the 21st, belief in an algorithm makes billionaires. Both are built on the same invisible foundation: faith, the quiet, collective agreement that something has value because we say it does. Crypto markets surge and crash. NFTs vanish overnight. Central banks create billions with a single keystroke, and every time we whisper to ourselves, this time it's different. But the curve of the cowrie still whispers. Nothing holds value forever, because it was never about the shell, never about the coin, never about the code. It was always about the story we tell around it. So next time you check your balance or scroll through a marketplace of pixels, remember the cowrie. Remember how something so fragile once ruled the world, until belief washed away. Because the true currency of history isn't gold or shells or crypto, it's trust. And trust is the one thing we keep trying to spend, but never truly own. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to The Price of History, where we explore the strange economies that built our world and the illusions that still shape it today.